Okay. We're going to let that collect itself for a minute. Any additional questions? I'm going to start. Yes?
How and where did you learn this talent?
Well, that's an interesting way to phrase it. I like that because people seem to say, oh, you're so talented, as though it did not involve any learning. That is not the case. So I am a teacher, and it annoys the bejesus out of me when people say that they can't draw a stick figure, because that is completely inaccurate. You're not interested in dedicating the time to learn a stick figure. That is a different thing. And that's fine. I mean, I'm not interested in learning how to play the oboe, and there's no judgment in that. But if people are interested in learning, you can. It is entirely a learnable skill. People just think that because it is an aesthetic thing, and because there's this myth of the grand genius artist, that they can't do it. It certainly helps if you have grand genius and talent and whatever, but that is not the thing that's going to make it happen for you. It's about practice, same as anything. I took piano as a kid, and I was considered apparently decently good, but I wasn't good enough to memorize, anything. I always used the musical notes. I didn't win any awards or do competitions. But in order to get to the level where they thought I was good and my instructor wanted me to continue on once she retired, was to practice every day for 3 years for a half an hour, and then have a one-on-one lesson with an expert once a week. How many of us have done anything related to that for art instruction? Or say soccer. I played soccer from like preschool until like 6th grade. So 3 hours of practice weekly plus, however many games on the week, whatever. And I was not good enough to even get into JV in high school. So people just drastically underestimate the kind of, art is not impossible, it is accessible to everyone, but it does take actual seeking out of education and practice to make it happen. It's not just going to happen spontaneously. We particularly forget that as adults because so many of our other skills, overlap with things we learned in school, so it comes easy to us to pick that up. Things like writing or reading or comprehension, all of those, they build on skills we already have. Art is such a separate skill level balance from everything else that we got in our general education. We're starting from such a lower level, and people tend to have very low tolerance for that. So a lot of the classes, the point is that you have to there's a very psychological element to it. You have to sort of figure out how to game your brain. Enjoying the process, even when the result is not necessarily what you want, is essential for that. Because if you can enjoy the process, you will continue doing the thing. So in my classes, that's the whole point. Like, do whatever you have to do to make it so that you are comfortable with making the art. Whether that has to be doing it small, never showing it to anyone, only doing flowers, whatever, I don't care. Just as long as you keep making the work, because if that is fulfilling to you to run a pastel across the page, to see the way that watercolor bleeds into each other and does that magical thing it does, if that is satisfying and enjoyable to you, you will continue to make the art, and then you will also get better. And then also, likewise, you don't have to get better if you don't want to. Like, if you just enjoy watching it puddle around and do whatever you want at that level, we don't all have to be Mozart. We can all, if you think that you have to be Mozart in order to be allowed to learn how to play Für Elise on the piano, that's going to be a really sad and poor world. So it's much better if you're just happy making cute florals that you put together on cards to give to people for Christmas. Yay, that is great. So you don't have to feel like you need to learn everything to do that. So in general, I was inclined to art since I was very, very small. I love paper, I love things that make marks. Ask my poor mom who had to rub marker off of many things that were not supposed to have marker on them. And then stacks and stacks of paper, I would just go through it. But I didn't really have any kind of formal training. I just read a bazillion books, and I would watch Bob Ross and various things. And then in high school, I took some drawing classes and things like that were pretty basic. And then in college, I actually do not have an art degree. That may surprise some of you, but my degree is actually biology. The overlap is the world is an interesting place, and I would like to record it. So I also was not able to minor in art like I was hoping because I studied abroad at Gonzaga in Florence, and all of the art classes they were taught by Italians who were not accredited by the American system, so none of that counted. So instead I minored in history, which in Florence is the same thing as art. So art history classes all over. So, and that was where I first started doing a whole lot, like I drew in class, couldn't get away with painting in the middle of English class, but I would draw because that helped me sort of listen and absorb to the lecture better. And then when I was in college, I would draw and paint in the dorms, I would draw in class, and then when I was studying abroad in Florence, I would drag my sketchbook around with me. It was 4 days of class, 3-day long weekend, so we could travel to different cities. So I would land in a different city and immediately start drawing and painting, and that's basically was my training ground for all of this. I took some classes with people, and then I did this. And then post-college, I studied under various people in a whole range of things: printmaking, figure drawing, oil painting, very little under watercolors. I've taken a few things, but mostly it's just been dint of me painting a lot and then watching videos and reading. So that is part of it, yeah. It's just doing a lot of it. Filling sketchbooks, they call it brush miles. Brush miles, you gotta get in your brush miles. So yeah, if you can build a regular habit of making art, even if it's very small, that's what's helpful. So for example, tomorrow is the start of what's called the 100-Day Project. And I did this a couple of years ago and saw a great deal of growth in my ability on certain things. And so I'm going to do it again this year. And the idea is you design a project for 100 days, you try to make art. You do like a project. And so it can be whatever you want. Some people do like 100 collages or 100 drawings of the view from the window. You have to try to narrow it down and make a plan so that it is like, what does it look like when the dog is puked on the carpet and I have to go somewhere and I'm sick or whatever. What does getting that in on that day look like? And then what does it look like on a day when I have like 4 hours to do whatever I want? So that way then you don't miss it, because just even a small amount of repetition, some people it's like 10 minutes a day or whatever, you're gonna make a huge difference in your ability to make art. And also I think spending that 10 minutes will also improve your day. Back when I worked a full-time job and I had over an hour and a half round-trip commute, I would basically try to bribe myself